In Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn famously writes about the line between good and evil and that it runs through the heart of every man. So the full paragraph there, when he talks about the line, during the life of any heart, this line keeps changing place. Sometimes it is squeezed one way by exuberant evil, and sometimes it shifts to allow enough space for good to flourish. One and the same human being is, at various ages, under various circumstances, a totally different human being. At times, he is close to being a devil, at times to sainthood. But his name doesn't change, and to that name we ascribe the whole lot, good and evil. What do you think about this note that we're all capable of good and evil? And throughout life, that line moves and shifts throughout the day, throughout every hour.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been focused on very succinctly is the idea that every day is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make better decisions, to learn and to grow. And I also think that, look, I grew up not knowing if my parents loved me, particularly my father. I never had a sense that I was loved, and that stayed with me my whole life. And when I think back at who my father was, and more succinctly, who he became, it was a gradual and slow and sad development. When I've gone back, and now I've looked at diaries my father kept and albums he kept, particularly when he was a medic in the U.S. Army, served our country with distinction. When the war was over and they went to Germany, the things my father said, the things that he wrote, the things that he believed were as patriotic as any American soldier who had ever served. But then when he came back to America and he had a dream of being a journalist, or his big hope was that he was going to be the great American novelist. He wanted to be a creative novelist. And so he sat in his office and he wrote for 45 years and never published anything. And somewhere along the way, in order to make money, he became what they call a technical procedure writer, which the best way to describe that is that if you built the F-16 aircraft, my father would have written the manual to tell you how to do it. I mean, as boring, as technical, as tedious as you can imagine. And so somewhere in the 60s and into the 70s, my father fell in with groups of people and individuals, pretend intellectuals, who started to give him reasons why he was not successful as a white Aryan man in the United States. And over time, my father became a white supremacist. And I cannot tell you the amount of times as a young boy that my father would sit me down and lecture me for hours and hours and hours about his fucked up ideas of America, of prejudice, of white supremacy. And thank God for my sister, who said, don't listen to a thing he says, he's out of his mind. And even though I was young, I knew everything he was saying was against people, and I loved people. I had so many wonderful friends. My best friend, Mike, who's still my close friend to this day, I was afraid to bring him to my house because I was afraid that my father would find out he was Jewish, or that my father would leave his office door open and someone would see his Nazi flag or his pictures of Hitler or Nazi books, or what he might say. So when I found theater in the 8th grade, and debate club and choir and festivals and plays and everything I could do to participate in that wouldn't make me have to come back home, I did. And I've had to reconcile who he became. Because the gap between that man who was in the U.S. Army as a medic and the man he became, I could never fill that gap. But I've forgiven him. But then at the same time, I've had to look at my mother and say, she made excuses for him. Oh, he just needs to get it off his chest. Oh, it doesn't matter. Just let him say. So while on the outside, I would say, oh, yeah, my mother loved me, but she didn't protect me. So was all the stuff that she expressed and all of the attention and all the love that I felt, was that because I became successful and I was able to fulfill an emptiness that she'd lived with her whole life with him? I don't know, but I've had to ask myself those questions over these last years to try to reconcile that for myself.
And the thing you wanted from them and for them is less hate and more love. Did your dad said he loves you?
I don't have any memory of that. I was in a program and they were showing us an experiment that they'd done with psychologists and mothers and fathers and their children. And the children were anywhere between 6 months and a year, sitting in a little crib. And the exercise was this. Parents are playing with the baby right there, toys, yada, yada, baby's laughing. And then the psychologist would say, stop. And the parent would go like this. And you would then watch for the next 2.5, 3 minutes, this child trying to get their parents' attention in any possible way. And I remember when I was sitting in this theater watching this, I saw myself. That was me screaming and reaching out and trying to get my parents' attention. That was me. And that was not something I'd ever remembered before, but I knew that what that baby was going through.